Is a man not entitled to make a video about ghosts riding people? Hello everyone! I don't know why I introed that video that way, but this is GhostRider, Benjamin Percy's GhostRider Part Dos. And again, GhostRider is amazing. I love Benjamin Percy's GhostRider run. So here's the thing, right? In the last video that we did, and really issue number 1 is kind of standalone. In fact, it's really one of the first issue number 1s that I've seen coming out of Marvel Comics in recent years that actually feels standalone, right? You could literally just pick up that comic and read it and just be like, you know what? I'm not feeling this. And that's fine, right? It's a great starting off point because it's designed to rework the story. Benjamin Percy's really good at that kind of stuff. What this one does is this picks up off the heels of that. And one of the cool things about this when it comes to GhostRider is that Benjamin Percy is returning him to form. Now, the reason why I say this is that the early GhostRider stories, while GhostRider himself was really more built on Daredevil, and in fact transforming what was Daredevil to a degree and taking the elements that people liked and turning it into a more interesting character, he wasn't that dissimilar from the Incredible Hulk in the sense that Banner would turn into the Hulk and the Hulk would turn into Banner. But one of the things about this is that unlike the Banner-Hulk dichotomy back in the day, Johnny Blaze was aware of what would happen when he became the GhostRider. Now, to a degree, Benjamin Percy's kind of modifying that a little bit in the sense that one of the things that Johnny Blaze says is sometimes I go dark. For hours, for days, I don't even know. It's hard to keep track of when, let alone where I am. I've got no memory of my clothes burning off my body. I've got no memory of the bike blazing off the road like a comet that missed its turn going 1,000 miles per hour. I should be dead. And even though every nerve aches like a hot hangover, the worst of it is focused on my head. Now, the thing about this, and even what he says, the dotted line painted on a highway indicates a fluid division. You can travel back and forth. That's how things used to be between me and the spirit of vengeance. But now there's more of a solid line, as yellow as sulfur between us. I go one way, he goes the other. We stay in our lanes. I'm Johnny Blaze or I'm the GhostRider. Now, this is kind of this is a shift that Benjamin Percy's making because in years past, again, just because of the popularity of the Incredible Hulk, around the time that Johnny Blaze was introduced, that what you saw was a lot of characters that had this kind of multiple personality type situation modeled off the Bruce Banner and Incredible Hulk relationship. But where Johnny was able to remember who he was in the past, albeit transforming into the GhostRider unwillingly, the reality is it wasn't really him looking at the world through the GhostRider's eyes. It was the two of them working in unison. I mean, sure, the GhostRider would just kind of do what it wanted to do, but Johnny Blaze wasn't unaware of what was taking place. The reality here is that with this kind of intermingling of personalities, over the years in Marvel Comics, Johnny Blaze became a character where he stopped being the guy that would transform into the GhostRider unwillingly and would actually be the GhostRider most of the time. He kind of started to enjoy what he did, punishing the wicked, different things like that. Now, just different writers' interpretations of the character over the years. Some people loved it, some people hated it, some people still say Danny Ketch is the best GhostRider, which, depending on who you talk to, it's kind of true, right? The GhostRider with like the flaming chain, all that kind of stuff, that's Danny Ketch. It's one of the funny things about GhostRider. When you think of GhostRider in your head, you're not usually thinking of Johnny Blaze. You're thinking of Danny Ketch. It's just that over the years, the two have just kind of become intermingled in terms of how people identify a particular GhostRider. But one of the things that goes on here is he says apparently he's ended up in Idaho, that he must have been writing for a week or so. So again, this is a big shift. The idea that Johnny turns into the GhostRider and has no recollection of what takes place, has no idea of what goes on. But one of the other things to keep in mind here is we basically end up transitioning over to Agent Warroad with her role in the FBI. Now remember, Warroad is a relatively new introduction, and in fact, as far as I'm aware, she's wholly new to all of this. We'll learn a little more about her as we get through this story because she's really fascinating, and truth to tell, I really hope she's not one of these characters that Marvel just writes out and gets rid of. I really like her character. But one of the things that goes on is, of course, they're basically riding in a flaming hearse, but what's also cool about this is she actually kind of toys with the agent to a degree, right? When it's just the two of them are kind of having this banter back and forth. And so one of the things she does as she's messing with Agent Wilmer to a degree is she kind of gives him a bit of a hard time. Now, this is kind of normal, right? For those of you guys who have ever found yourself in a new situation, right? Work, school, whatever it is, the people who are interested in you usually bust your balls. Some people call it shit testing, whatever the case happens to be. But it's people just kind of giving you a hard time to see what mettle you have, right? Can you stand up for yourself? Do you have some gumption? Or are you the kind of person that just lets everybody run over you? And so she just starts giving him a hard time time, right? She's like, you know, you're so uptight. I bet you're the kind of guy who doesn't like for his food to mix. I bet you color code your sock drawer and keep your magazines alphabetized. And you probably have a ledger full of weird little lists, like the states you've been to, or the sci-fi movies you've seen, or like your favorite dinosaurs. And that's when he's kind of like, I mean, how did you know all that? Are you some kind of a seer? And she's like, well, I mean, I got some spooky stuff going in my head, but I basically broke into your house as well and then just looked through all your stuff. This is why I love her character, man. Like, it's just, she's cool the way that she operates. But what she also does is she literally climbs into a coffin in the back of the hearse and then just kind of muses to herself. Now, this is why I say this character's so cool. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more of her. This is why her character's so cool, right? She says, I've always been different in a way that scares people. Second grade, I drew a picture that looked like black scribbles inside of a walnut. When the teacher asked me what it was, I told her it was the cancer inside her liver. She was diagnosed 2 weeks later. When the other kids went to recess, she kept me inside and slapped me with a ruler until my cheeks and knuckles bled. I told my mom she had a baby inside her before she even had herself tested, before she even peed on a stick. And I told her the same baby was dead before the nurse confirmed it with an ultrasound. And she says, I see bad things, right? She's like, what's his name from The Sixth Sense? You know, she's like, I see a highway that wasn't on any map that featured flayed bodies crucified to telephone poles for 10 miles, a church that burned with the congregation still praying inside, a storm of blood that lasted for 5 days and flooded a town, a rising darkness through which a face keeps flaring into view in the shape of a flaming skull. Now, here's one of the reasons why I love this whole explanation that goes on here. Benjamin Percy is truly bringing GhostRider back to form. And the reason why is because you talk to anybody out there who's been reading GhostRider for, say, the last 20 years or so, you know, really since like the mid-2000s, and what they'll tell you is Marvel drastically tamed down Johnny Blaze. His story, like GhostRider stories, were not interesting. And even when Robbie Reyes became GhostRider, it was less like the dark demonic elements of what made GhostRider who he was, in the sense of the stories were like really dark and twisted, and it was more like, I'm Robbie Reyes and I've got a really tragic backstory, and like, you know, I'm in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and here's some cool stories. And it's not to say his stories were garbage. I mean, the GhostRider stories under Robbie Reyes were pretty fun, but it lacked that real just dark and grittiness, right? That kind of hellish sort of landscape that you associate with a GhostRider story. It's one of the things that made his character so popular when he was first introduced, and even going throughout the 80s and into the 1990s. And so what we end up doing is picking up with GhostRider inside Idaho, or in the state of Idaho, when he checks into just some really seedy hotel. And what he talks about is that his mind just can't really focus, right? That at the moment he really needs money more than anything else. And so while he's looking in a mirror and just kind of musing to himself, we end up finding out that behind this mirror is literally a makeshift hallway where you have a guy that's sort of making his way through there and looking at each individual person inside their hotel room. Now, this guy's not some kind of a perv, although I wouldn't be surprised if he was to some degree, but instead, what it does is it allows him to observe what are basically his victims, the people that he's going to end up going after. So again, one of the ideas behind GhostRider, and this is where I'm not entirely sure that I agree with where Benjamin Percy's going, and we'll talk about that once we get to that point, because I feel like I understand why Benjamin Percy did what he did, but in truth, I feel like it should have gone in a different direction. But this guy literally just kind of marks one of the rooms with like a mom and a dad and a little girl. And so following that, of course, Johnny Blaze ends up visiting with him, kind of talking with him, and then it's like, look, man, I need work, right? I don't really care what it is. I need some kind of money. I'll scrub toilets. I'll do whatever I have to do, man. But like, I need something, right? Blood and sweat, whatever you need, I can take care of it. And so initially he's put to work just kind of cleaning up rooms inside the hotel, but he finds little things like teeth, or he finds what looks like hair and like, you know, worms and stuff like that in the drains. He sees some pretty wild stuff, right? Like bodies that look like they've been singed into a bed. By all standards of measurement, he finds what looks like basically a murder scene. And so as he bumps into a mirror, and as the mirror falls and shatters and he sees his reflection as the GhostRider in it, that one of the things that's kind of cool here is he says, there's a part of me that wants to pretend I don't know how all these broken pieces fit together, because I can already see him sparking inside me. But I've never been one to drive by an accident. I might be able to swallow down my own pain, but I can't abide seeing others wrestle with hurt. Now this matters, because in the old school stories when GhostRider first popped up in Marvel, one of the big caveats of his character is that Johnny Blaze would turn into the GhostRider whenever he was in the presence of evil, specifically people who do evil things, right? Harming others in egregious ways and so on and so forth. And so as Benjamin Percy, again, kind of bringing that back. And as he makes his way through this corridor, he says, I know better than anyone. Most people have an outside face, the mask they offer to the world, and then an inside face, the raw and naked part of them that they only reveal behind closed doors. Sometimes the inside face is timid and vulnerable. Sometimes it's terrifying, but it's always true. The dark places are where the true face hides. And so once he gets into the room where you basically had the family with a little girl's stuffed bunny's torn to pieces, the room's covered in blood, and that's when he realizes they've been made victims. And so as soon as that happens, the GhostRider persona manifests, right? The spirit of vengeance takes over. And so what we end up doing is switching over to this guy when he's inside this giant cavern and basically prepares his family as what are essentially sacrifices. So they're not really dead yet, and so we don't really know where all the blood came from. Maybe he just beat him up really bad or something like that, or cut him a few good times. We don't really know. But the truth about this is that this family is being sacrificed to this gigantic demonic entity. Now, this is where I kind of disagree with what Benjamin Percy's doing. He's building up a kind of giant demonic story arc, right? That in the absence of GhostRider and the spirit of vengeance, these demons are more or less populating and taking over the world in different capacities, tapping into the dark wants and desires of humanity and manipulating them to do their bidding, things along those lines. A more classic GhostRider story would be that this guy was just twisted and was probably eating people, and like, that's it. And so literally GhostRider shows up, does the penance stare, makes him feel all the pain and suffering that he's caused for everybody that he's ever hurt, and the guy goes into a catatonic state, and then Johnny Blaze would either burn him alive or the guy would just die, right? Or he would just spend his days as a vegetable, literally as a turnip, just sitting in a hospital somewhere, and that would be the story of him. So that'd be a more traditional GhostRider story, and it's kind of what I was hoping we would get, but I'm not overly against what we end up seeing here, because one of the things this demon does is it immediately eats the dad. Like, it doesn't hold anything back, right? Benjamin Percy's just like, yep, he basically consumes this guy. He bites him in half. And of course, that leads to the arrival of GhostRider. Now, it's one of these really cool, you get like this amazing moment, right? You get this amazing kind of speech where he says, later I would learn this thing's name. It's like a mouthful of earthworms that cannot be replicated with words. It had been unearthed long ago when some miners cracked open its womb. They were hungry for gems, for money. It was hungry for blood and marrow. Over the years, it found a way to quietly maintain this balance of appetites, money for blood. Elk, bears, dogs, the occasional human sleeping in an alley, a tent, or a parked car. But lately, it had grown more bold because the whispers in the shadows told it, you have nothing to fear. And he says, but the whispers were wrong. The shadows lied. And he literally points to the guy and says, penance. And that forces the guy to snap his own neck, right? To literally kill himself. At that moment, this monster recognizes Johnny Blaze and it realizes Johnny Blaze is back. And that's why you have this interaction between them where, because Johnny Blaze was being kept in Hayden's Falls, which was basically a town that was operated by demons, albeit allowing Johnny Storm to be removed from the world as a whole, every other demon out there saw it as their chance to do their own thing. And they were all informed that was the case, right? Johnny Blaze is being held as a prisoner in his own mind over here. So it's open season for you guys. Go and do whatever you want to do. And they were relishing in that, right? They were having the time of their lives, manipulating humanity and so on and so forth. And that's why it says, like, you were supposed to be extinguished. You were supposed to be gone. Your time is supposed to be over, and our time is supposed to be now. And the response of GhostRider is, let it be known, I ride again. And in doing so, kills that guy on the spot. And so following this, you switch back over to War Road and to Wilmer, and they basically end up pulling a U-turn and following a fire truck to literally to where this hotel is. And as they get there, they start hearing people saying things like, it was a man with a flaming skull. He made everybody do this, all that kind of stuff. And so that's when you have War Road who makes this deal, right? This idea that she's going to eventually find Johnny Blaze. The irony behind all this is she doesn't know that Johnny Blaze is really more of a hero than a traditional villain, but just the nature of GhostRider itself is that he's more akin to like the Punisher, albeit for like exceedingly violent people that the Punisher wouldn't normally be able to handle, right? Demons and different things like that. And so War Road doesn't have the bigger picture. But that's why I say I really hope this turns into her becoming a far more involved character in the GhostRider mythos, because I'm curious to see what happens when she figures out what's actually going on. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.